Oh man, this show is insane. You're going to love this one. We got another edition of Career Killers, the infamous side of fame where sketchy artistic moves and bad behavior and deceit and of course out of control egos create career killers. We'll tell the story of a band who was on top of the world with the biggest album out there till their lead singer proclaimed himself a prophet of God and wound up homeless. There was a band that delivered the most notorious performance on Saturday Night Live, and they were done after that. Plus an offensive t-shirt that made a rookie lead singer a villain and derailed his band who was at the top of their game at the moment. And then a singer who was riding high who had released a live album that became the biggest selling album ever at that moment. But a bad movie role in one of the worst movies ever killed his career until recently. It's embarrassing, but always entertaining. Career Killers, let's do it. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock always here to celebrate the greatest songs and the greatest artists of all time. We've said it before, achieving success in the music business, it's not just about talent. It's about those critical decisions that one makes and how the team around them navigates the road ahead. In this episode, we return to our show Career Killers, exploring top 8 stories of artists who made pivotal missteps that truly stalled or even shattered their careers in an instant. Starting us off at number 8, it's one of the most infamous moments in rock history, but a lot of people don't realize a certain part of this. Let's talk about it. I'm talking about the Miami incident involving Jim Morrison and the Doors.
When the music's over and the light.
And most people forget, this actually hurt the band immensely. Most remember it differently because after Jim Morrison's death, the band's stock went up big time and they became a legacy act. But how do you live? This might have been worse than history remembers it. The so-called Miami incident centers on a March 1st, 1969 Doors show at the Dinner Key Auditorium. Jim Morrison, clearly off his game, was arrested after a performance that many described as chaotic and fueled by heavy drinking. Jim Morrison arrived annoyingly late. He was intoxicated and engaged in rambling and provocative behavior on stage. Of course, Morrison's stage behavior was infamous. He'd sometimes refuse to perform Light My Fire, a song he'd come to dislike, and occasionally he'd launch into poetry readings. About an hour into this Miami show, the atmosphere changed once the band began playing Light My Fire. Up to this point, Morrison had been ignoring the crowd's demands to hear the song. Now, they barely finished it, with Morrison mumbling some of the lyrics before chaos broke out, total chaos. The disorder of the night led to numerous conflicting stories about what happened at the Dinner Key Auditorium. Accounts from witnesses and band members vary, especially through the years. Some have said that he simulated an act that, of course, I can't say on here, but it's the word choral minus the C. And then he exposed himself, and then others, like keyboardist Ray Manzarek, insist that he did not expose himself and was instead performing a theatrical confrontation with the audience. Now, the concert ended in turmoil after the stage collapsed under the weight of the crowd. Wow.
I want to change the world. Want to change it.
The cancellations cost the band a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, which back then was close to $500,000. And they faced legal battles and attorney fees for Morrison's defense, which upped it. There's some debate about whether he exposed himself, like I said, but charges range from lewd behavior to public profanity and public drunkenness.
I want to hear.
The chaos didn't end with that night, though. Loads of concerts were canceled, and for many fans and commentators, it marked a turning point that helped push the band toward its eventual decline. Morrison was found guilty in September of 1970. He faced 6 months behind bars and a $500 fine. Now, Jim died in Paris before the sentence could be carried out during the appeal process.
And hopefully, it'll be over in time for me to do a European tour.
Then, more than 4 decades later, in 2010, Florida Governor Charlie Christie, he granted Jim Morrison a posthumous pardon, citing unresolved questions about the case's evidence. After the Miami incident, though, the Doors had other hits. They did have Love Her Madly and Riders on the Storm in '71, but promoters were very reluctant to book them, and their live business suffered significantly. And who knows what would have happened after that had Jim lived. It may have derailed the band completely.
Say, don't you love her madly? Riders on the storm.
All right, at number 7, I have a real head scratcher. Peter Frampton. His career dive after his decision to be in the truly terrible movie Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I mean, it's the name of one of the greatest albums of all time. It's one of the worst movies of all time. Peter Frampton wrote a once-in-a-lifetime wave after Frampton Comes Alive. You know, exploded in 76, he had 3 huge hits, and the live album that became the biggest selling album of all time for several years, until a few others passed it up like Michael Jackson Thriller. But Peter had worked for years after those same songs from Frampton Comes Alive had all failed on the charts. They became smashes after he released that live album.
Ooh, baby, I love your way. Feel like I do. Oh, show me the way.
But that momentum ground to a halt after Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in 78. Peter Frampton played Billy Shears. And the film was panned by critics and failed to perform at the box office at all, a rare misstep for a star riding such a high crest. The film is frequently cited as a cautionary tale about misjudging material and audience taste. It destroyed Frampton's credibility, as well as other artists that were involved in the film, like Earth, Wind & Fire, Aerosmith, Alice Cooper, Billy Preston, and the Bee Gees.
Come together right now.
All the artists in the film took a massive beating from the press, and even fans thought it was really awful, even to now. The crushing disappointment of the Sgt. Pepper disaster ripple affected his career, undermining the credibility and excitement surrounding Frampton's live rock identity. It really hurt him. As the 80s rolled in, his albums failed to recreate that magic of the peak, and he struggled to adapt to a changing rock scene, including the rise of MTV-era aesthetics and newer, edgier acts. The result was a notable decline in visibility and chart vitality, even as he continued to release music and tour. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Peter Frampton's a legend. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But think about it. This is how bad this movie was for his career. Do you remember anything Peter Frampton did in the 80s? Or even the 90s? It just didn't work. It really hurt. Here's perhaps the worst part of the story of the Sgt. Pepper movie, though. Robert Stigwood, the producer of the flick, lied to the artists to get them to agree to be in the project. Frampton says he was duped into taking the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band role, and he truly regrets it. But he was told that Paul McCartney was also going to be involved. Claim he says proved false upon his first meeting. He stated that he and his fellow cast members all hated being in the movie, but stayed because they were threatened with a heavy lawsuit if they pulled out. So that was a big misstep. Coming in at number 6, we have the insufferable narcissism that halted the successful run in the 80s for the group Dead or Alive. Pete Burns' confrontational personality and unapologetic extravagance contributed to the decline of Dead or Alive for sure. He alienated potential fans, and he generated conflicts within the band and eclipsed the group's musical output. They could have been much bigger. However, the band's downturn was also influenced by broader trends in the music industry and a diminishing appetite for their brand of pop music, so there's that. Even before Dead or Alive's rise to fame, Pete Burns had a reputation for being really difficult and caustic. As an employee at a Liverpool record store, he was known for insulting customers' music choices. There's rumors that he got into fistfights with fans about their music choices and yelling matches, and it was pretty bad. This combative attitude carried over to his dealings with the media and the public, creating an evil reputation that could ward off potential fans, and definitely did. Burns' personality was further amplified by his appearances on British reality television shows like Celebrity Big Brother. While some viewed him as an entertaining, eccentric, his unfiltered, controversial comments could be off-putting to the wider general audience. He definitely sparked controversy on the show after claiming to have a coat made from gorilla skin.
I my fair coat.
Burns' frequent and extensive cosmetic surgeries, though, they definitely put his career in the toilet, and the health complications that resulted from that became a central story in his later years and overshadowed his music completely. The surgeries and often negative tabloid coverage eclipsed any serious musical discussion of his artistry or songcraft. It painted a picture of a troubled individual rather than a successful artist that had 8 top 40 hits in the UK and 10 top 40 singles in Japan, including 3 number ones. And, they sold over 30 million albums around the world up to that point. Of course, there was the 80s classic, You Spin Me Around Like a Record. Sadly, though, Pete Burns died in 2016 at just 57. Coming in at number 5, most will not admit they like this band, but even the Ramones liked them. Not even liked them, loved them. They had very catchy stuff. Coming in at number 5, I've got the attempted reinvention and truly bad behavior of the Bay City Rollers. Now, let me explain. The lights came up a little too early in a concert theater one night, as if the house crew had decided the show must go on even when the crowd wasn't sure what to do with it. Let me explain. The Bay City Rollers stood on that stage in a hush that felt heavier than the air. They had peeled away the last of their squeaky clean boy band polish, and they tried to press the pause button on the glossy posters that had painted their faces in every teenage bedroom from Edinburgh to California. The name had changed as well, a dull echo of their past. They were now calling themselves the Rollers? Yeah, the Rollers. Oh man, it wasn't just a rebranding. It was an attempt to reinvent the machine itself, to strip off the glitter and pretend that they were, if only for a moment, adults in control of their own destiny. It would be like Donny Osmond trying to be called Don Osmond, or Ricky Schroeder went with Rick Schroeder. Anyway, the reinvention they chased, it felt noble at first, trying to outrun the gravity of their image and grow up in public, while, the world still wanted the bright, candy-colored faces in jackets. The press pressed for meaning, and the band offered rehearsed lines about artistry and responsibility and living up to a legacy that never fully belonged to them alone. Yet the numbers told a different story. Tickets stalled drastically through week after week, and once adoring reviews shifted toward critique as critics noted hollow grown-up ambitions paired with a sound still echoing school dances and saucer-eyed smiles, if you will. And then there was the new name album, and it felt like a hinge that wouldn't swing cleanly, uneven, creaky, and oddly self-conscious about its sincerity. I mean, the audience wanted to relive the nostalgia and their youth every night, not to be reminded what the Bay City Rollers we're trying to be serious adults, I guess. And then there was that really horrible, unfortunate incident that could have been prevented. On a fateful evening offstage, an incident occurred that would later serve as a watershed moment for this band. In 1975, Bay City Rollers lead singer Les McEwen, who had long occupied the precarious space between the limelight and the tour's darker realities, he drove a car in a moment of reckless pressure and poor judgment. The vehicle struck Euphemia Clooney, a 75-year-old widow that was Les's neighbor. It was a death that would reverberate far beyond the music and defy any retrospective reformatted press release. The charge of reckless driving was pursued, the courtroom process followed, and the public reaction wavered between curiosity and horror at a tragedy that had little to do with the notes that this group sang and everything to do with the choices made when the spotlight blurred the line between caution and bravado. The band never recovered, and it did taint their legacy to a very large degree. And Les passed away just a few years back.
It's just the price you have to pay.
All right, our number 4 pick on our Career Killers countdown is one that is quite legendary in the lore of the Pacific Northwest. How a popular band from Seattle dissed Jimi Hendrix. In the mid-'60s, Seattle Sonics were riding a lean electric wave that would help shape garage rock and later influence grunge in that region. The The Sonics were ready for their close-up, and they had a chance to become truly great. And that chance would have probably doubled or even tripled if they hadn't made one of the most boneheaded decisions in rock history. According to Pacific Northwest music lore, a young Jimi Hendrix once approached the band at a gig, rumored to have his own equipment in tow, asking to sit in and jam, play with him. He wanted to do it very badly. The Sonics, a tightly wound insular group with a blowtorch of a sound, they reportedly told Hendrix to get the hell out of here. They had no desire to play with him, effectively turning down the opportunity to collaborate or even have Hendrix as a member of their band. The anecdote, tied to a Spanish castle show south of Seattle, is often cited as a defining what-if moment, or what the hell moment, if that is. Hendrix would soon explode onto the global stage while the Sonics continued on with their raw, influential, but comparatively low-profile career. After telling Jimi to get lost, fans started to see a different side of the band as they began to pick up a little steam after the rise of punk. Even though they were barely a blip on the radar in the early 60s, they were definitely ahead of their time, chipping away at the safe, familiar rock and roll mold and leaning into deliberately nasty, boundary-pushing songs. And while punk would come later, the band also built a real following in their home state as one of the earliest roots of grunge. Not by chasing a grunge sound on purpose, though, but just by playing raw and feral. Bandleader Larry Parpa, in particular, he talked about wringing as much ferocity as he could out of his guitar, laying the groundwork for a sound that would only gain intensity in the decades to come. Now, people that knew of the incident with Jimi Hendrix have often wondered what could have been, what should have been. Since Jimi was by nature bold and provocative, and so were the members of the Sonics. It could have been cool, especially Larry. It could have been an explosive chapter in rock history, but instead it became a tell on this countdown, and others like it. It's an example of egos getting in the way of a greater collaboration that could have significantly influenced all in the way that Nirvana captivated a generation years later. So if one sums up the legacy of the Sonics here, this is what they might have said. Their original albums did well regionally, but it wasn't until 2004 that the Sonics broke into somewhat of a national spotlight that they teased in the 60s. The turning moment came when Land Rover tapped Have Love Will Travel for a commercial. Now, first the ad folks wanted a contemporary band to cover the track since, Sonic's version wasn't widely heard. About 10 years ago, the band played some European dates and Northwest show to coincide with a new album and DVD release. Lead vocalist Jerry Rossley had a heart transplant, and some friends say the transplant gave him a new perspective on life and death, nudging the band toward a reunion. In short, they're still playing shows here and there without Larry, but the band faces the reality of advanced age and health concerns. And the other question to ponder is, if the Sonics would have let Jimi Hendrix in the band, how would his career path have forged from there? Would he have died at such a young age? It's interesting to think about, the great what-ifs. Coming in at number 3, it's the story of a band that had everything going for them. They ruled radio for a time. I mean, really ruled radio. And they're a huge what-if. I'm not a big fan, but I'm talking about the band Creed. One of the big head scratchers of the last 30 years for sure. It's a story that epitomizes the danger of letting fame go to your head and swell your ego out of control. So in 1999, Creed was one of the biggest bands in America, if not the biggest. Their album Human Clay sold over 11 million copies in the States, along with several massive songs that are still played on radio. The face of that particular time for sure. Their follow-up LP, Weathered, that also sold extremely well. But then the band hit a wall of arrogance that completely killed their career. Creed's demise wasn't just bad luck or bad timing. Scott Stapp's ego, the way he positioned himself as a messianic figure, played a huge role. He talked about himself as the voice of a generation and a messenger from God. He even compared himself to Jim Morrison and John Lennon, and some have even rumors out there that he compared himself to the Messiah himself. This painted Creed as rock salvation rather than just the band making popular music. That self-anointment came across as out of touch to bandmates and management and fans, and it burned bridges inside the group and with the public and with the media. As the years wore on, personal spirals, alcohol and mental health struggles, they amplified the rifts and it fueled the infighting and the missed timelines and a rotating lineup until the once rising star couldn't hold the machine together anymore. By the time the band finally tried to regroup, the trust and the chemistry were gone, and Creed's empire crumbled from the inside out. There was a period of time after the breakup of the band that Scott Stapp was penniless. He was literally living out of his car. He's homeless. Similar to the group Nickelback for a long time, Creed has been the butt of jokes.
This photograph, it's a photo of a photograph.
But there is a somewhat happy ending to this story. Recently, Creed has been enjoying a notable comeback sparked by a successful reunion tour and also renewed interest in their music. After a 12-year hiatus, the band regrouped for the Summer of '99 cruise in April of 2024. And then they launched a lengthy North American tour that drew big crowds to amphitheaters and arenas, delivering high-grossing returns. So it killed their career, but they did come back. Coming in at the bridesmaid position, our number 2 is one of my personal favorite bands of all time. It's a band whose singer and leader may be the biggest head scratcher in rock history. Because Paul Westerberg is one of the best songwriters of his generation. And the Replacements, one of the coolest rock bands ever.
I can hardly wait. Wait on the sounds of no one. Flashes of young. Tonight, if you were dead, I would be dead.
But they repelled commercial success. To the point where it exhausted even their most ardent fans. Me. As well. They were so obsessed with not selling out that they lost a chance at true greatness. And their appearance on Saturday Night Live, that incident was a doozy. The Replacements spent years teetering the line between art and self-sabotage. They did things that kept their music feeling authentic, but it drove their label crazy. They would get so drunk that on any given night, it could be the best band in the world or the worst when they were in a drunken stupor. The most famous example came on Saturday Night Live in 1986 when they showed up and basically blew off the show. That performance earned them a lifetime ban from SNL and became a symbol of their rebel streak. It also underscored a bigger tension. Their defiance clashed with the label's money-driven goals, shaping a myth of artists who wouldn't play by the rules even as their career began to wobble. Big time. The Replacements SNL fiasco in '86 is the stuff of legends, though. A band already known for chaos, drank heavily with guest host Harry Dean Stanton, forgetting lyrics to their song Bastards Are Young, misfiring on every chord, and even cursing on live TV. A broken guitar and sheer lack of coordination capped the debacle of an evening. And man, the fallout was swift. A lifetime band that underscored their anti-mainstream stance even as it sidelined their career in a moment of spectacular self-sabotage. After the Saturday Night Live fiasco, the Mats, Replacements, they never found the same equilibrium. Internal tensions simmered for years as the band's success steadily declined, and the Replacements formally called it quits in 1991. The strain, though, went beyond what had happened on SNL. Lead guitarist Bob Stinson was pushed out in 1986 amid escalating drug and alcohol problems. It was a fracture that would echo through the remaining years. He actually passed away in '95. The official cause was organ failure, but it's widely remembered in the scene that his heavy heroin use played a major role. The Replacement song Sorry Ma Forgot to Take Out the Trash was played at Bob's funeral, and there's a park bench dedicated to his memory in a park near his favorite fishing hole in Minneapolis.
You can leave your mark, and Johnny's gonna die.
Now, Replacements frontman Paul Westerberg pursued a solo career. He even issued work under the alias Grandpa Boy, if you've heard that. Good stuff, great stuff.
Shine.
Surprisingly, he would later return to the stage as a solo artist on Saturday Night Live, an episode in 1993. Actually performed a Replacements song. It was a moment that underscored both the band's enduring legacy and the distance that had grown between its original flame and its later chapters. Man, they're so worried about selling out, they missed a big opportunity. All right, for an honorable mention, I got to go with this one. In 1989, rookie band Skid Row was riding high. I mean, they were blowing Bon Jovi off the stage as the opening act every night on that big tour, the New Jersey tour. And their debut album was selling like hotcakes on the strength of their big hits, 18 in Life and I Remember You. I mean, as the new decade started, the band looked poised to take over rock. But then a couple of incidents derailed them. And of course, it didn't help that grunge came in and took over completely. But leading up to that, their 5-octave singer Sebastian Bach received harsh criticism for a t-shirt he publicly sported displaying a slur. And it said, AIDS kills blanks dead. I won't repeat the slur on here, but the t-shirt landed the band in hot water. And then to make matters worse, suits were also filed against Bach after a concert during their tour where the singer allegedly threw a glass bottle into the crowd, injuring a young female fan. You can look up the t-shirt online because I don't want to go into that. But these things combined with the rise of grunge took the band off their path. The t-shirt made their singer a villain for sure. Now, Sebastian Bach has a different side to the story, and I want to share that. In a Metal Hammer interview from 2006, he said, and I quote, "I never wore that shirt at an MTV press conference." That was actually the rumor for a long time. It's not true. I wore that shirt once in my life. I came off stage in Irvine Meadows in California after Pantera had opened for us. When we finished, I was totally hot and sweaty. The guys from the LA Guns were all backstage, so I said, "Give me a shirt to put on." And Jerry Miller from Metal Edge magazine is there, asked him for a picture of all of us. So I just picked up this hideous shirt that some fan had thrown up on the stage and I put it on. We all knew it was the worst shirt of all time. It wasn't some campaign that I went on. And since that time, Sebastian has donated countless sums to LGBTQ causes. All right, our number one pick on this edition of Career Killers is one that demonstrates how changing the sound of a band can turn off fans quickly and lead to a fall from the top of the charts to never come back. And I'll tell you what, Color Me Bad, their fall wasn't one big crash. It was really a series of misfires, starting with a creative pivot that was an epic fail.
To them all.
Very confusing one at that. Plus the internal tensions that kept gnawing away at the band. Now, lead singer Brian Abrams' struggles with addiction were in that mix as well, and the engine just ran out of steam. Now, Color Me Bad is one of those boy bands that you pretend to hate, but you secretly love their 3 big hits. I'm talking about their 2 number 1 singles, I Adore Me More and All For One, and the number 2 smash, I Wanna Sex You Up. They were part of my guilty pleasures thing that I did. They're catchy songs. They all came from their big debut album. After that, Color Me Bad gambled on a bold, ill-advised rebrand with the album Time and Chance in '93. They brought in big-name producers Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and tried a funkier, less doo-wop sound, but it didn't land at all. Fans hated it. The album felt sprawling and disjointed. 19 tracks with too many cooks in the kitchen, lacking the tight, cohesive vibe that made their first record soar. As the 90s rolled in, the industry moved toward grunge and rap and hip-hop. And Color Me Bad's updated sound missed the moment, sending sales on a downward slide while internal tensions and Abrams' personal struggles pulled the group even further apart. I mean, people forget how big Color Me Bad was back then. They exploded on the scene after their debut. I mean, New Kids on the Block and the other boy bands were shaking in their booties. They gave every pop group a run for their money back then, racking up a string of high-profile nominations and wins as well. It signaled real pop cultural impact. They actually won the Best New Group at the 1991 Smash Hits Poll Winners Awards in the UK. The Soul Train Music Awards, they took home Best R&B Soul Single and R&B Soul Song of the Year for I Wanna Sex You Up. And then the momentum continued into the 92 Grammys, where they were nominated for Best New Artist and Best R&B Performance by a Duo or Group. That same year, the American Music Awards crowned them Favorite Soul R&B Single, while they earned additional AMA nods for I Adore Me More and for categories spanning Favorite Pop Rock Band, Duo or Group. It was huge. I mean, their singles, like I said, they had 3 massive singles that they still play on pop radio. All of this underscored just how popular Color Me Bad had become after their breakout debut. I completely understand the desire to stay artistically fresh. I mean, you want to stay interesting, and I respect creative ambition. But with all that massive luster, why would you take such a big gamble and completely change the sound of the group on just the second album? To put the move in perspective on how it affected the overall success of Color Me Bad, CMB, their debut album that had all those hits, sold over 10 million copies and went to number 3 on the Billboard album chart, while Time and Chance, their second, peaked at number 56, and it didn't even sell 1 million copies. Color Me Bad's internal tensions have long been part of their story, though, even though the band started out as old high school buddies. Those frictions came to a head in 2018 when Brian Abrams was arrested after an onstage altercation that appeared to involve violently shoving a fellow member, Mark Cauldron, during a performance of I Want to Sex You Up. Police in upstate New York say Mark was knocked into nearby sound equipment and treated for neck and back pain after this incident. Brian was taken into custody on suspicion of third-degree assault on his own band member. Mark recounted that Brian sang out of key. He left the stage after the first song of the 10-song set and came back for the finale. He says he was blindsided by the shove and could hardly believe what was unfolding. Mark was lucky that he wasn't pushed off the stage instead of into a bunch of sound gear. That could have really resulted in a much more serious injury or worse than that. Mark and the other bandmates believed that Brian was intoxicated, and they expressed concern for their friend's well-being. The incident came about 27 years after Color Me Bad's blockbuster debut, and it underscored that nothing had really changed since the band started falling apart a few years after a very promising beginning. Man, Color Me Bad, they went from 10 million to less than 1 million. It's crazy. So those are our career killers. Leave us a comment. What are your memories of these songs, your memories of these incidents? Let's have a great discussion below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.